Welcome in everyone to RedRaiders.com. Zach Long, Nick Kosmider with the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. Today's order of business, Texas Tech's bowl destination. Earlier today, Texas Tech accepted a bid to play in the Meineke Car Care Bowl of Texas. December 28th at Reliant Stadium in Houston against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And Nick, my goodness, every twist and turn you could think of the last few weeks, and even more so today, before we find out where the Red Raiders would play in the postseason.
Yeah, ever since October 20th when Tech had that thrilling triple overtime win against TCU that put the Red Raiders at 6-1. We've kind of tried to guess and project where the Red Raiders might go, and kind of came down to today. And one of the interesting things that happened was obviously Northern Illinois, after winning the MAC championship game, busts in, gets a bid to the Orange Bowl, pushing OU out of the picture and into the Cotton Bowl, and that kind of dragged everybody else down in the Big 12. And so there was all this kind of wondering, are they going to be able to get into the Holiday Bowl, maybe even up into the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl? Are they going to fall down to New York, or even heck, the Heart of Dallas Bowl, the Big 12's last bid? You never kind of knew. But what happened was, obviously Kansas State going to the Fiesta Bowl, OU to the Cotton Bowl, the Alamo Bowl takes Texas, the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl takes TCU, and the Holiday Bowl, which always likes a shootout, took number 1 Baylor and its great offense. And then that left the Meineke Bowl with 4 teams to choose from. You had Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, you had Iowa State, and West Virginia. And of those 4, Texas Tech is the only in-state school there with a big alumni base in Houston. And I think that was probably the deciding factor for that Meineke Car Care Bowl, to have a team with a good brand like the Red Raiders and to have kind of those in-state ties.
Texas Tech probably very fortunate, Nick. They did not want to end up in Dallas or New York.
Yeah, they had that game, the Dallas game was the Ticket City Bowl 2 years ago, and just wasn't a whole lot of excitement over that game, and probably definitely didn't want to go back to that twice within 2 years. So they avoided that. New York is it's such a haul. I mean, playing in Yankee Stadium, a kind of a neat deal, but really far away from your fans, would probably be difficult to draw, and that was a better fit for West Virginia, obviously, which ended up there. But no, you go back, and they had a 2003 game in this bowl game. They beat Navy 38-14. And playing a Minnesota team where you had that epic game in 2006.
The Insight Bowl at that point.
Sure, and so there was some interesting intrigue there to have them be in this game, and I think ultimately with all that went on and finishing your season with losing 4 out of your last 5 games, I think they're in a pretty good spot.
Now, Nick, let's take a quick glance at the Red Raiders' opponent in that Meineke Car Care Bowl of Texas game, the Minnesota Golden Gophers from the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, and their season to some degree has kind of mirrored what Tech has done. They started off really hot, 4-0. We're looking good in that Big Ten, but they've since struggled, losing 3 out of their last 4 games, and they finished 6-6 in that league. I believe they were last in the Legends division, and so they were kind of down there, had a rough slide. They play well defensively. They're 39th in scoring defense in the league, only giving up about 23 points a game. Their offense isn't very efficient, 108th in passing, I believe 81st in rushing, and so they have trouble scoring points, and so it's kind of going to be an interesting dynamic to sort of see maybe how those 2 teams match up, given that their one team's strength is maybe another team's weakness, and so that's going to be kind of an interesting thing. It was obviously a down year in the Big Ten this year, and you had several teams who couldn't be bowl eligible, talking about Ohio State and Penn State, and so that was kind of, I think, what left them to have some teams slide down into the bowl order. But again, we talked about that history of that 31-point game. A lot of people remember that, and I think it's given where the Red Raiders could have ended up, I think this is going to be a pretty decent matchup and a chance for them to kind of do something positive at the end of the year. Excellent
chance to get to 8 wins, which may have been a lot different had they ended up against a higher caliber Pac-12 opponent.
Sure, yeah. I think the Red Raiders will go into this game likely favored by a fair margin. It's too early to tell just by how much, but obviously we'll keep an eye on that as we get closer.
And we'll have much more on this game. We just want to give you a quick glance today. We'll be in Houston all week with the Red Raiders during Bowl Week at the end of December for full coverage of the Meineke Car Care Bowl of Texas. Until then, we'll have features and other things as the Red Raiders prepare for this bowl, so you know where to go. LubbockOnline.com, RedRaiders.com. Nick, as well as Don Williams, will have all kinds of good stuff for you going up to that bowl game, and we'll be in Houston during Bowl Week. But until that time, for Nick Kosmider, I'm Zach Long. We'll see you next time